The American public is being gaslit by the media around the Federal Reserve's plan. This, according to Simon, the uneducated economist. I thought we would poke at this. We talk about Rebel Capitalist and his amazing interview with Sean Cannell. But let's get into it, Simon. We're all being gaslit. What the heck is going on?
Yeah, this is something that I have been trying to break down for quite a while is the monetary policy strategies for a low neutral interest rate world. Most people get confused just by that statement alone, but really what's going on is the Federal Reserve is needing an inflationary scenario. They need high inflation expectations to run through the economy, in order to raise the neutral interest rate. And this is the effort that is being pushed through the economy, through the mainstream media, to give attention to that higher inflation for the monetary policy. Now, most people think that they are attempting to fight inflation, to try and bring inflation down to a 2% target. And this narrative, again, runs through rampantly through the media, and it's a incorrect narrative. It is not what the Federal Reserve is attempting to do. And so now when the gaslighting begins, a lot of people might recognize it, but they are also recognizing it incorrectly.
Okay.
What most people would assume the gaslighting is that inflation is running here at 3% or 2.8 or whatever it is they're saying, but it's actually running way up here at 8%. Right. And so a lot of people look at this as being the gaslighting. Like the reality of the situation is that it's running much higher than what they are putting forth. Right. So people think
Okay.
of that as being the gaslighting. That's not it. Right. I mean, that might be part of it. That might be a factual thing. That might be real evident within the economy. And that might be the reality of the situation. But that's not what the Federal Reserve is attempting to do. The Federal Reserve is attempted to make sure that people's inflation expectation remains elevated so that the neutral interest rate will begin to rise. And that is what they are attempting to do. So they have to maintain an elevated inflation expectation going into the future in order to raise that neutral interest rate in order to get their monetary policy ammo back. That's what they're up to.
Yeah, so let's kind of play this out for the average
Sure.
Joe, somebody who's not in the weeds, who's not reading all the Fed stuff like you are, right? You have this hunger and this passion for reading Fed material that very few people have. So you're able to tie these things together at levels that most of us can't see. But if we're just an average Joe, right? We got a job, we're trying to take care of our bills. We are certainly feeling inflation, right? We may even feel inflation higher than what's being reported. Totally get that. Totally makes sense. But how is an average person kind of feeling, or maybe they're not supposed to, that the Fed is trying to take expectations higher, right? Kind of play that out for me a little bit.
Well, they're not supposed to feel that way. They're supposed to
Oh,
feel
okay.
right. Like, I mean, are you asking me personally, or are you asking from monetary policy view?
Yeah.
Because,
Well,
like,
I guess
ultimately,
both. I want to start personal, and maybe you're right.
okay.
Maybe the answer is we're not supposed to. Hence, we're being
Well,
gaslit or tricked or hidden or whatever you want to call it. But
Well, no, the reality of the situation is you are feeling pain, right? I mean, especially if you live a dated, a 9 to 5 job working, paycheck to paycheck, the experience of an inflationary scenario is incredibly painful to you. And there is a reality to that situation taking place. No doubt about it. Whether you understand the economy or you don't, that is a factual thing that is happening, zero doubt. Now, what the government, which I don't believe the government's doing anything about it, what the Federal Reserve, now there's a separate entity, right? So what the Federal Reserve is attempting to do about it is bring that inflation down. That's what most people are looking at the Federal Reserve, and believing that they are attempting to fight this inflationary scenario. And that everything that they are doing with the high interest rates, which is also painful, right, again, is an attempt to be like good for you in the end to try and bring these prices down. All that is the perception that most people are taking to the economy. And again, there's all this reality to that. There's no lies being told, right? But the meaning that most people are giving it is just that the Federal Reserve has to raise these interest rates in order to fight the inflationary scenario that is so painful for everybody to experience here at the lower end. And we can set that just aside for just a second and then look back at it and say, okay, now what is the Federal Reserve really attempting to do? Because that is what everybody expects and sees and knows that it's the factual evidence of. But is that the reality of the situation? If you go back in time and you look back at their monetary policy and the things that they were saying about it, they knew 20 years ago, better than 20 years ago, that there was going to come a time in which that they were going to hit the lower bound of zero, and monetary policy through the interest rate adjustments would no longer be an effective tool. It would come to an end, right?
Mm.
Knowing that way, way ahead of time, like before we even got there, right? We're talking like 2001, 2002. They knew that they were going to have to start figuring out the tools that they need in order to conduct monetary policy with, and that was through the communication styles that they began to use. See, before the Federal Reserve would be very silent. Now they have all this communication, like everybody's looking. What is the Fed saying? What Fed governor? What interview? What plot map? Whatever. I mean, there's all this stuff that comes out. They never did that before, right? That was all. This is all new. Like that's not something. See, the Federal Reserve used to keep the communication so quiet, right, that they even said that they would rather shock the markets with interest rate adjustments. They wouldn't even tell you. They would just one day you'd wake up and boom, interest rates had adjusted, right? Now they have all these different communication tools that they have built in order to get that information out. And they found that if they communicate the interest rate adjustments ahead of time, that they can make those interest rate adjustments more powerful. In fact, they found that it was more about the communication style and how much they do of it that meant more to the monetary policy than the actual adjustments themselves. So by the time they actually adjusted rates, it didn't really do anything to the economy. They found that the communication ahead of time had done it.
Yes.
So now we got into a point where the interest rate adjustments had hit the lower bound of zero, but it didn't really matter because they had all this communication style
Mm.
set up ahead of time. Right? In order to communicate these interest rate adjustments and to get the economy, the people idea of what is happening ahead of time to actually react, because that is the actual monetary policy now. The
Mm.
interest rate adjustments don't do it. See, you can see the evidence of an interest rate adjustment failure is by hitting the lower bound of zero and having like low interest rates and having incredibly low unemployment and still yet not finding the inflationary scenario that they were looking for. And this is what we were experiencing at the end of the Trump administration. Like all the years of quantitative easing, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and low interest rates and high and very low unemployment and the best economy in the world and all this other stuff still failed to produce the inflationary scenario that they were looking for. Why? It's because the interest rates don't mean anything anymore, right? Low interest rates fail the economy. It's the perception of it that is now conducting everything about it.
So if I understand this and I kind of play it forward, one of the goals of Jerome Powell, because his tenure, I think, is up in about 18 months, let's call it 2 years, is to kind of leave when he's done, is to have the zero bound in the rearview mirror, to have a new baseline so that monetary policy can be effective the next time we have a recession or pain. Is that kind of one of the bigger goals, or am I missing it?
Well, I think that's it. That's the attempt, is to, as they can continue on keeping the inflation expectations elevated, excuse me, and that will begin to raise the neutral interest rate. And so as the
Right.
neutral interest rate begins to rise, this will then become more effective of a monetary policy tool for the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates, because now they can get it further below the neutral interest rate before hitting the lower bound of zero. Now, is it like nobody knows exactly where this neutral interest rate is, right? Like, I mean, they have all kinds of ideas and they can project about it, but it's something that you have to look at in the past to see. So there is no telling what the neutral interest rate is today. A lot of people say that it is rising because of the higher inflation expectations. And the longer that stays elevated, the further the neutral interest rate will go. And again, if they can keep this scenario going, right, in my feelings, like if we can understand, I know I'm getting really deep into a lot of this stuff. A lot of viewers are like, what the fuck? I'm sorry, I don't mean to cuss, but like, what the hell? Right. But if they can keep this scenario going where they maintain the Fed funds rate right where it's at and they can raise the neutral interest rate, what they will do is make the economy less restricted
Hmm.
as we continue on, right? So people wonder why it is we're having such a strong economy. Well, this is really it, is because the neutral interest rate is rising and is becoming ever closer to the Fed funds rate, which is actually making the economy less restricted. On top of that, we have this expectation of cutting interest rates going into the future, which again is a stimulation to the economy. And then again, on top of that, we have another expectation that is going to be coming, which is the reduction of the balance sheet. Right. So, like, we have this balance sheet reduction taking place, and they're going to reduce the reduction, meaning that instead of rolling off, what is it, 65 billion or 60 billion in treasuries, they're going to take that down to like 20 billion. So, there's going to be more liquidity within the market, which again is a very stimulative kind of aspect. So, all these stimulation kind of points are coming to the economy, but everybody thinks they're being restrictive.
Mm. Wow. There's so much there. There's so much there. So I am curious, right? Because again, we get all of this. It's kind of like the Fed is playing a different game than what's being represented by the mass media. Right. I
Absolutely.
think that's
Absolutely.
really the point. And if we just talk about the game being played in plain sight, we got a jobs number on Friday that threw the market for a tizzy, right? 200 and whatever it was. It kind of has lots of holes in it, but we'll talk about that later maybe. But what happened is strong jobs and interest rates went up, right? The 10-year note spiked like 14 basis points in a single day, which is really unheard of historically.
Mhm.
What was kind of your thoughts when the job number came out hot and you kind of saw the market reaction?
Not a surprise. That did not surprise me one little bit. Not one little bit did that surprise me. I kind of almost, I didn't expect it to be that big, and I didn't expect the Treasury to move as much as it did. But I was not surprised by there being a hot jobs market.
Yeah,
See,
very good.
this is again proof and evidence of what I am saying about
Right.
how the interest rate adjustments fail. They don't work anymore. It's not a matter of the interest rate adjustments. See, we have high interest rates. This is typically a bad scenario for the economy, and you would see unemployment begin to rise. Now, this is a typical expectation of how the Federal Reserve would have conducted themselves, say, even just a decade ago or more. And that by raising the interest rates, what you will do is you will slow investment into business. By slowing
Right.
the investment into business, you will slow the unemployment, or you will slow employment. Unemployment will begin to rise. As unemployment begins to rise, there will be less consumers participating in the economy because they're not earning any money. Less
Hmm.
consumers in the economy, supply demand imbalances become more imbalanced, more in line, right? They've become balanced, and then you find where prices stop increasing, and in a lot of ways they can even come down. All right, so that's how a typical like Federal Reserve
Yep.
expectation of the economy would work. Now, same thing in the opposite of it is if they lower interest rates, you can spark business investment. Business investment will then go into employment. Unemployment comes down. People start working, spending money into the economy. And then again, the supply demand imbalances, and then inflation starts to move up. So this is how everybody would have kind of anticipated how the Federal Reserve would work. But they raised interest, or they lowered interest rates to zero, right? And it didn't create the inflationary scenario they were looking for, even with the low unemployment. They raised it, and they still have low unemployment. Like, it doesn't work. Like, it's proof of it right there. So typically right now we would see like layoffs killing the jobs market. Unemployment would just be going crazy, and it's not happening, right?
Mm.
Why? It's because we're not living in the same scenarios in which we used to live in. The interest rate adjustments don't work. They don't
Got
work.
it. Got it. I like it. I like it. Well, next week is again going to be a big week. We get both CPI and PPI in inflation. I think CPI is like, actually, I think I wrote it down somewhere. I think it's like 3.2% or something. Um, it's again, 3.4. Sorry, headlines 3.4, cores 3.5. Is inflation above 3% just kind of the new norm? Is that where we are?
Well, I think that's what the Fed wants.
Really? You think the
Oh,
Fed
yeah.
the Fed's given up on this whole notion of 2%? That's part of the gaslighting
Oh, they gave up on 2% back in August of 2020
when they went to average, right? When they went to
when they
the
went to
average.
average. That's right.
Right.
And in fact, if you look in their statement back at August of 2020, they said that appropriate monetary policy would seek to achieve an inflation that was moderately above 2% for some time. But they
Right.
didn't give any definition to what moderately above 2% is, nor did they tell us. In fact, they told us we will not give you, or do we have a mathematical formula for figuring this out.
Yeah.
So I don't know what moderately above 2% is. I don't know if 2% inflation is like if 2.8 is moderately above, is it 3.5? Is it, I mean, if you're looking at 10% inflation, then I would think somewhere around 3% would be moderate, I mean, so
Yeah.
I don't know what
Yeah.
moderately above it means, but that's kind of the interpretation that I take, is that it needs to be somewhere above 2% for some time, right in line with everything that they have said. They said it back in
Yeah.
August of 2020, and then Michelle Bowman, who is a very influential
Yeah.
voting member of the FOMC, reiterated that exact statement just 2 months ago in April in her speech. So it's
Yeah.
not like,
I want to talk about Michelle Bowman a little bit because she,
Mhm.
at least as I see all the 18 or 19 Fed presidents, 18 plus Jerome Powell equals 19.
All
She's the
right.
most hawkish. I think she was the first to come out, I think, in that April speech and at least hint at, hey, we might have to hit the market one more time going higher. Um, is that just a threat, or do you think the Fed could actually go higher one more time?
Well, I mean, they could, but I don't think they will. I don't think they need to, because interest rate adjustments don't really do anything. It's the threat of it that does. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a credible threat by far, and it's really, she's just one vote on a
Yeah.
board of 12 other people, 11 other people who are going to vote on monetary policy, and then the five alternates into uh, analysts or whatever they are. So
Yeah.
yes, 19 members to the FOMC. She's just one of them. And
Yeah.
anything that I hear coming from a statement in the mainstream media, in a news article, or anything outside of a Federal Reserve speech or statement that is directly from the Fed itself, like a Fed press statement or something of that nature, I believe it to be propaganda. That is
Yes.
part of the forward guidance. That is part of the credible threat theory. That is pushing the narrative out there. So do not trust it for reality. There is facts. It is truth. It is everything out there. But again, gaslighting is leading you down a particular
Yeah.
perception, right? Is leading you to believe that they are doing something that you think is reality when it's not the truth, right? So again, like, knowing the truth to begin with from their own statements coming from their speeches is the appropriate communication, because that's
Yeah.
what they're talking to the other bankers about, right? That's what these speeches are all about. It's not
Oh,
communication to the public, it's communication to the other bankers. And that's why it's really difficult to get through them. They're like, they talk in a funny language. It's all weird in the way they communicate it. And so it's because they do that in almost like a code like way, so that the public doesn't know. Because if
yeah.
they knew this, then it wouldn't work. Like, it would just
Yeah.
mean, like, the whole policy would fail. Like, it'd
Right.
be like, okay, well, we got to come up with something else, because this credible threat theory thing that I coined a credible threat, but the whole forward guidance thing isn't working anymore.
No, I love it. And again, this is why you're so uniquely gifted is you've taken the time to study their statements from the past. You remember them, you recite them, and then you could take current statements. And you're absolutely right. I've actually told my channel and followers, the Fed's got, two tools, right? Their actual rate decision is a blunt I can't say it. Tool. It's a blunt tool. But watch what they're saying, right? They're trying to do something, and you using the word gaslight, I think, is absolutely right. I'm going to go to a
Yeah.
question from one of the somebody watching that I think is really interesting. Clear
Yep.
value tax. I think his name is Brian Kim. I'm not positive, but the clear
Right on,
value
man.
tax. Yeah, has said the Fed wants to continue indefinitely so as to devalue the government debt. What do you think about that? Is one of the things they're trying to do by moving the inflation expectation from 2 to something higher, just about getting eventually burning through this debt that we keep piling up $1 trillion every 100 days?
Okay. I think that, okay, so I think that's a reality, but I don't think that's the intent.
Mm.
Okay.
That
I think that I think there's a reality to that, but I don't think that's the intent of the Federal Reserve. They have already said many times that the federal government, that the United States government is on an unsustainable debt path.
yes.
They have warned that so many times. And I have nothing that I can find within their own statements on what it is they plan on doing about it. In
Mm.
fact, it's not their job to do anything
Yeah,
about it.
that's what I was going to say. It's not in their charter, Simon.
It's
The
not in their
national debt's
charter.
it's not
They're
there.
like, hey, we're an observer of the situation right now. We're, looking at what you are doing, and you're on an unsustainable path, right? I mean, it was like,
Yeah.
what do we do about it? Like, there's nothing they can do about it. Like, they can obviously
Well, they're the
provide the
firefighter. I think they get called in if something's on fire, but yeah, they're like, dude, that's not, stop that. Stop doing that crazy stuff.
if if I was to say, okay, so the information that I have dug from all this years, right? If there was a piece of information back in there from the things that I recall, like you were saying, because I do, like, people don't like having conversations with me because I'd be like, well, remember that time we were driving through the Safeway parking lot and you said whatever? They're like, holy crap, man, do you remember that? And it's like, 'cause it's like little pieces of videotape,
Yeah.
right? So, and anyhow,
Mhm.
um, Ben Bernanke, in a speech a long time ago, right, had talked about the asset purchases
Yep.
that were going to be coming, right? He talked about quantitative easing long before it happened. You got to remember, like, before quantitative easing, there was $850 billion on the Fed's balance sheet. $850 billion, right? And then after quantitative easing one, two, three, and four, there was 4.5 trillion, right? So it just exploded. It's just
Loaded.
like an
Yeah.
insane amount. But before that happened, Ben Bernanke knew that asset purchases was going to have to be part of the tools, right? And that they would be in it. He talked about it years ahead of time. That's why it wasn't like a surprise tool for a lot of people out there, even though it was thrown on the market as a surprise tool, this money printing, right? They knew that they were going to be doing it. However, they also know that they can't force the government into an unsustainable debt path, which is exactly what's happening right now, right? By doing all these asset purchases. Like, if you're going to go into asset purchases, you have to have something to purchase, which means that the government has to go into debt in order for the Federal Reserve to purchase something to provide the liquidity out there, which is all the dollars. And now this gets to be in a very crazy concept to think about, but most people are focused in on the United States, not thinking that the United States and the Federal Reserve has to provide dollars for the entire globe. Right? Like, and now how do you do this when you are limiting yourself to the amount of assets or type of assets that you can put on the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve? So this is one of the reasons why the government is in so much debt right now, is so the Federal Reserve, or the government is in so much debt, so the Federal Reserve will have an actual something to buy, which is the U.S. government debt, right?
Mhm.
Now, in Ben Bernanke's speech, he talked about the purchasing of foreign assets, foreign debt, and
Mm.
putting it on the Fed's balance sheet. Instead of buying U.S. treasuries, they buy the debt of a European nation or Brazil or whoever. And then now this ends up on the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, and they print out Federal Reserve notes, U.S. dollars. Like, wow, what does this look like? This is something that Ben Bernanke had talked about. He didn't elaborate, didn't go into what this would look like, but mentioned that it could be a possibility. Wow. Then
Yeah.
how much printing
Wow.
can the Federal Reserve do? They're not limited to the U.S. treasuries. They're limited to the entire global debt.
Oi, oi, oi.
All right. Yeah,
Wow.
that ain't enough to spin your head, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's break this down for the individuals, right? Our followers,
Mhm.
uneducated economists, one rental at a time. When I think about what clear value tax is proposing, inflation, basically, I have this saying. I think you've heard me say it. Inflation's a feature, not a bug, right? It's part of the system, right? The Fed wants it, and I think what we're hearing is the Fed wants more of it. At least the expectations to go up. So if that's true, you should invest like it. And we're very special in the United States. We can get 30-year fixed rate debt. It's a one-way bet on the future. You can refi lower if rates fall. And if it goes higher, it doesn't matter. You can't get called. It's not like a commercial loan. So if you can find cash flow, if you can find a home that's less than rent, the whole secret to this is buy assets and hold, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's the thing. When I started breaking this economy down, when I started trying to figure out to the essence of it, I started coming down to the economic forces, the old theories, the underlying things that are happening. You can start building up off of them, but there's underlying economic forces that are taking place out there. When you take out debt to buy cash flowing assets, rental property or something, you know so much more about that than I do. I recognize what it is, right? Got good debt, bad debt. A long time ago, there was a shift that happened. We had hard back currency, right? There was people out there in the barter system who needed something to barter in order to make the cash or in order to make the transition from their goods and services to other goods and services. They found that coins made a great deal, right? Those people started bringing in a lot of coins. The coins were cumbersome. They sat in a vault. Pieces of paper made it out, right? When the pieces of paper made it out, it started making the efficiency of transactions amongst the people so much easier. People started realizing there was a lot more paper out there than there was actually coins sitting in the vault. This little moment right here, right, when people realized it and called them out and said, you got to stop, and it didn't stop, a smart person went back and said, you're going to print up a bunch of paper. Can I borrow some of that? Because I'm going to go buy that. You see where I'm getting at?
Exactly. Yeah.
Borrow it, and I'm going to go buy that rental property right over there. And
I'm
since
going to
you're
buy that
just gonna,
ranch or that. Yeah,
since we're going
exactly.
to print it up and just go and spend it willy nilly, but I'm going to borrow it and I'm going to go and make me some money off of your little scheme right there. And there were some
Exactly.
smart individuals who figured that out. Unfortunately, the dude who's sitting out there pushing that plow didn't recognize it, doesn't understand what's happening, and he's out there busting his ass trying to plow. And he's trying to figure out how much more plowing he needs to do in
Yep.
order to get into that rental property. You see
Exactly.
what's happened? This is the essence of it, right?
No,
And so,
I agree 1000%.
right? And so if you're
Don't
not
hate the game. Don't hate the player. Hate the game.
hate the game, it sucks. It
Hate the
sucks.
game.
It
Exactly.
sucks, right? Like, I mean, there's nothing I can do about it, right? I mean, I
No,
can
no,
bitch
that's
and
not
moan and
true.
scream.
That's
I
not
can,
true, Simon.
no, I mean, there's nothing I can do about changing it, but there is something I can do about playing the game, right?
Yes, exactly. Play the game and the rules that are out there. Stop arguing. Stop saying they're not fair. Stop, woe is me. The rules of the game are painfully clear. To your example, oh, you're playing a funny game with your money. Can I borrow some? Oh, by the way, can I have a fixed rate debt at 3% for 30 years? Thank you. I'll take some of that. And you'll just
That's it,
play the game. Play the
right?
game.
I mean, really, you can almost break it down into those 5 steps, right? I mean, it's like,
That's simple. Here's the deal, Simon. I think the game is 3 steps. Let me play it out for you. Step 1, you're the guy in the field with the plow. Your job, only job, is to create discretionary income, aka disposable income. How do you do that? You plow more, you spend less, or you do both. Live below your means or plow more. Find a way to plow more. You then take that disposable income, you save it, you become an elite investor at something. That could be stocks like Warren Buffett. That could be rental properties like me. That could be whatever. It could be classic cars. It could be Mustangs. Whatever. Become elite. Become in the top 5% of that thing and then do it for a decade. You're going to be rich at the end of that. It is that freaking simple, people. What do you think?
yeah. I think that's an excellent way to go about it. I mean, really, I think the hardest part that most people, and it was probably one of the hardest parts for me to finally come to the conclusion of, is that everything is built, right? It's built brick by brick, right? And then you go back and you look back at it, and people are like, "Wow, man, look at this beautiful thing you have." And it was like, "Well, yeah, you know how long it took to put together, right?" I mean, it was a brick by piece, and it didn't seem like it was much at the time, and the little, like,
Yeah.
all the effort it took to put it there seemed like a lot, right? But every time you did that, it made it easier and easier. By the time you came to the very end of it, it was like, it was almost like it was effortless, you know? It
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like,
I get that.
people were like,
I
how
get
do you
that
do
all.
it? It was like, oh, it was actually kind of easy, but it was just a long piece by piece, you know,
Dude, I
putting it
get
in
that all
there.
the time. I've been in the game 20 years. People look at what we have now and they're like, either they say you're lucky or timing or whatever. I'm like, dude, you would not want my life for 15 years. You don't want to live on 50% of your income. You don't want to not take a vacation for 12 years. You don't want to have one car. You don't want to stop it. And oh, by the way, you could do it too. It's like, stop running up your credit cards. Stop YOLOing life. Man, people just don't get it. I want to switch gears
Yeah.
on you in a minute.
Yeah. Let's do it.
You went to Rebel Capitalist. You were a featured speaker, I think, for the second year in a row. Love to hear about Rebel Capitalist, George Gammon and crew. How was it?
Oh, Rebel Capitalist is an incredible event. I mean, this is a group of individuals of like all kinds of thought. I mean, you're going from real estate to macroeconomics to new world order kind of thought to, I mean, everything under the sun. And it is such a fun experience to be at this particular event. And I don't know how else to quite describe it other than like it's a serious deal. Like, the networking that takes place there, the communication styles that are happening there, it's all incredibly very serious. I have to say, honestly, though, your event was the funnest one. Like, it was the one where I think the people enjoyed the event more. Like, it was business, it was pleasure, it was everything under the sun. It was like it was entertaining. Everything about it was just a great experience. The Rebel Capitalist, I find to be almost a little more on the how can I say, like, the expected, like, cookie cutter style awesome convention that you would experience. It was beautiful as far as that goes. 500 people attended this particular one, so it was a good group, and a nice attendance there. Spoke for 45 minutes on stage, did the four economic theories and the idea of the average inflation rate, very much similar to what I had done at your conference as
Mhm.
well. Um, the I think the biggest one, the biggest takeaway that I had taken from it was the incredible amount of uncertainty that everybody has about the economy right now. Like, everybody had like a different view of what was happening. It was just like, all kinds. It was all over the board. Um, and so like I think that like Jeff Snyder probably put on the best um, presentation as far as the information that he puts out there. He talks a lot about the euro dollar, which is that global demand for dollar and the dollar dominance around the world. He does such a great job with his presentation on that. And then, of course, like my favorite has got to be Mark Moss. Mark Moss does such a great job presenting. Like, what ends up happening at a lot of these conferences is that you're sitting there and you're like, okay, well, what, it was like, you're talking economics and boring as hell. Mark's presentations are always very engaging, always very entertaining. And somehow for 45 minutes, he can sit there and keep you like not only in tune to what it is that he is saying, but then filling you with a lot of good information. And you're like retaining it the entire
Mm.
time. And he does such a good job of it. So, and
Yeah.
then also, he talked about how Bitcoin was going to go to $400 million a coin, which just made
400
me
million?
just yeah, so this made me super excited, like,
I got to
yeah.
keep my
So
one
I
coin,
was
I
like,
guess.
yeah, I'm on board with that, Mark. Let's go to 400 million. So
400 million. Mike, did he say a time frame? I'm just curious.
he did. He had this outlandish idea on how it came there, but he was, he was being realistic for
400
it.
million.
Yeah,
Okay. All right.
it was pretty funny. Yeah.
I think a lot of people would be happy with 4 million, but 400
Oh
million.
man, absolutely. I mean, I my expectations of Bitcoin are pretty low, but it's pretty fun to watch too. It's
Yeah.
just like to
Are you
to see
still
this
a
thing
buyer?
taking off.
Are you a buyer of Bitcoin today?
Yeah, just about $50 every month.
Oh, so you dollar cost average, $50 a
Have
month.
been for years, years and years. I had a guy give me a bunch of it a long time ago, but pretty much I don't know how many different purchases that I've made at $50, but
Okay.
that's
I
how I
like it.
do it. 50, yeah, 50. I don't like I essentially I don't even know what my I mean I guess I could probably figure it out, but
Right.
I don't really
Nice.
pay attention to same thing with
Okay.
silver. I do the same thing with silver.
Yeah. Nice. Silver, you actually own physical. You're not buying the ETF.
I don't buy well, I own a little bit of ETF just to have some skin in the game so I understand it a little bit better, but it's literally like 50
Yeah.
bucks worth in an ETF.
Right.
Everything is physical. Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Well, let's switch gears.
Okay.
You actually were interviewed by Sean Cannell at my event. That event was February of this year. The video just came out, and I just was blown away by your conversation with Sean Cannell. That was amazing.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I remember having the conversation and I remember kind of stepping out of the room there thinking, man, that was a lot of fun. That was really incredible. That was a great conversation. And we were at the conference, so already my head was kind of swimming and I kind of forgot about it. And going back and watching the interview again, I have to say that was probably the best interview I think I've ever been in. I mean, well, definitely in the top three, and
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Well, the reason I thought it was so powerful is I have a particular passion to get Gen X and baby boomers to realize that they have some passion, some interest that they could share with the world. And we already have enough 20-year-old life coaches, right? And really what I took from your interview with Sean is he did a great job of kind of peeling your layers, right? You have a day job. It's retail. It's selling lumber. Retail had this, or lumber had this moment where it spiked crazy and the media was going one direction. And you're like, no, buddy, that's not what's really happening. It's going this direction. And then the fact that you do these live, no editing from your car, from your phone, right? You just have everything from your phone to this
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Yeah. I made it like there was a time that I did video editing. Like I had a hobby. I would set up 6 cameras, do all this stuff, edit all the video, make this really great thing, put it on YouTube. Nobody would watch it. Right? Like it was just like I was doing like these farming things, and just fun, just for fun. Like I didn't think anything about it. And so like I've always kind of like doing videos and stuff, but ultimately when I started the YouTube channel, I had already known that I had the passion for economics. Like I would just babble on about economics. I would listen to as many videos and lectures and just dive into as much research as I could possibly do. And I would just babble on about it. I knew deep down inside that I had a passion for this stuff. Like, some people, like my buddy Dan can fish, man. This dude, like, if it was like, hey, Dan, let's go fishing. It's like, not today. Why not? Because we're not going to catch anything. All right. Then we go out fishing with Dan when he's catching, and you're catching, like you are on it. And I was like, how does he know that? He just knows how to catch fish. He knows what the conditions need to be like. He can see it in the air, whatever. It's just like he just knows. And if he was to do videos on how it is that he reads the Columbia River and how it is that he fishes, he can make a lot of money because people would pay a lot of money to have that kind of knowledge from him. He has a passion for it. It's deep down, right? Everybody has this. Everybody has it within them. And when I was able to finally have an outlet like YouTube, it just comes pouring out in a way that I was never expecting. Now,
Mm.
fortunately for me, I also had some experience in my past as far as being in front of an audience every single weekend calling bingo at the local tavern, right?
Yeah.
So it was like, I would get up in front of like, 25 to 50 people once a week and just call numbers, and we would laugh and joke and, drink beers and do whatever. And I did that for a very long time. So being able to be in front of a crowd, at least on a small scale, was somewhat comfortable for me. So putting videos out really wasn't that hard, but it was like, a little nerve wracking, especially when the video started to take off, because I thought, man, there's no way I can't do this, right? There's this thing is getting too popular. But ultimately, yeah, it took off and it started doing really well. I was sharing my experience, and yeah, just kind of got to this screw to this
Yeah.
huge level.
Yeah.
But
I forget when did you when did you get your silver play button? When did you cross 100,000? How long ago was that?
yeah, that's funny. I was just talking about that just this morning. It was in July, 2 years ago. So almost 2 years ago right now.
That's amazing.
That we crossed 100,000. We're just about ready to do 139,000.
That's
So
amazing. And
yeah,
again, from his car, no editing, live.
yeah,
That,
yeah. Like well, I mean, the live streams that I'm doing now are a lot more frequent than I used to. I used to just do basically a 10-minute recording and then I would upload it. So sometimes, I would have to do the recording, 4 or 5 dozen times. If it wasn't coming out, maybe I would just turn it off and then come back to it a couple hours and try it again or something of that nature. But ultimately, like, I wanted to get more experience being on the fly with my communications and my videos and stuff. So I was just like, okay, well then just do live streams for a while on your lunch and then get
yeah.
some experience being live all the time, and then you'll be like a lot more comfortable being in front of an audience and stuff like that. And then I found that it's even easier doing live streams, so I just quit doing recordings, because
Yeah. Yeah.
now I don't even have to upload. I can just do the live and hit done.
I think doing live streams is awesome. I've been doing a live stream for almost 5 years, 5 days a week, called the Daily Financial News. So I love doing live streams. There's another question from the audience, but I actually, before I get to it, you shared a story um, about with Sean Cannell, somebody doing dishes.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
tell that story.
Yeah, so okay. So when we hit 100,000 on the channel here, and I'm thinking back, I'm like, wow, why did this channel take off? Like again, no edits from my car, straight shot, all this other stuff. And I'm still thinking, I'm like, how in the world did it do this? Right. So I'm thinking of like just breaking it down, like getting away from like, oh, dude, it's you, you're awesome, all this other stuff. Okay, whatever. Right. Okay. Maybe, it's got to be something more to it. Hey. All right. So I take it back and I'm thinking, okay, what took place, right? I was doing consistent videos, consistent, right? The same type of videos from my car, talking economics, talking the same style of economics. I wasn't jumping all over the place. Right? I was doing not only the consistent with the style, but I was consistent with the uploads, right? I was consistent in all fashions of it. Like what the viewers were seeing in my previous video, they were going to see in the next video. The information might be different, but what they were going to get from me was essentially going to be the same thing. They were going to experience me. And so I thought to myself, well, I think you could do a YouTube video on anything out there. Like literally anything can be content. I don't care what it is. It doesn't matter, right? So long as it's consistent in that fashion. It's the same style of video that you're doing, whether it's like, again, whether it's fishing or sports or economics, it doesn't really matter what it is, so long as it's consistent. And then the uploads being consistent, meaning like, you want to do them, you want to do like 3 a week or 1 a week or whatever, but don't do like 3 this week and then skip for 4 weeks and then do 1 and then skip for 4. That's not consistent. Consistent uploads on a regular time. And if you do that for a year, YouTube is going to go out there and find an audience because there's 6 billion people out there in the world, and 1 billion of them, 1.7 billion of them are on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
So it's just like there's a huge group of people out there. And what's funny about it is that I look at videos and I think to myself, I don't know why in the world somebody would watch this, but yet there's people who do, right? And like, I'm not into it, but then again, there's 1 billion people out there who are into stuff that I'm not into, and I'm into stuff that they're not into. It's totally reasonable that even somebody doing the dishes will get viewers. And
Yeah.
sure enough, that's exactly what my wife done. She did the dishes, set up the camera, did one shot doing the dishes, labeled it as an ASMR channel, and has now built it up to over 500 subscribers. Right? And that's
I
been
want
over the course of 2
I
years.
want to hit I want to hit this. Again, I agree with you. If there's because here's the question from the audience, which I led to that story. So you're saying you just started talking to your camera and put it on YouTube. I have passion about something, but I can't imagine who's going to listen. Your
Perfect. I
wife
love that
does
question.
dishes.
Okay. This is the most brilliant thing about the whole universe, right? This is what's awesome about it, is that you're right. Who would listen to you? Who would listen to some dude who barely graduated high school, who lives way out in the middle of the boonies, doesn't have any experience with finance and all the other stuff, right? No experience in any of that stuff, yet has built a YouTube channel talking about macroeconomics to the level that I have. Why? You know why? It's because there's people out there who want the information from me. They don't want it from
Correct.
anybody else, right? They don't relate to those people. They don't like the way they communicate to them. They like the way that you communicate, right? That's why you're going to be able to be in a world of flooded information, right? How many people are out there talking macroeconomics, and yet here I am in the middle of this where I have no business being, with no credentials and no experience, but yet here it is that I'm doing it. Right? It's
Yeah.
because anybody can do this if you take in that idea that you have information to share, and there's people out there who want it from you, not from that other person over there.
Yeah.
It's the exact same information. They don't want it from them. They want it from you.
No, I totally agree. Let's give a shout out to your wife's channel. What is your wife's channel? Washing dishes.
It's dishes every day because every
That
day
is an
there's dishes,
awesome
right?
name. Dishes
Yeah.
every day, folks. Do me a favor. Go to Dishes Every Day. Give her a subscribe. See what's going on. Again, I think it is just a perfect example.
Hmm. Yeah.
Especially if you're Gen X and baby boomers,
Right.
you
And
likely
see,
have a passion for
right.
decades that you can
And
pull
see,
on.
and this, I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt there, Mike, but this is exactly it. This is why I think like a lot of people really need to take into consideration why it is that they need to put their information out there, why it is they need to put their stuff, right? Is because Dishes Every Day is putting something out there. She had somebody contact her and say, hey, thank you for doing this. I go to sleep with the vacuuming videos, right? Another person says, I just put it on there because I wanted to hear the noise in the background because I miss being at home. I'm at my dorm and I want to hear like mom doing the dishes and doing stuff like that. These people are finding use within it, things that we had no idea that would experience, right? That's where you're going to find putting your information out there is going to have that same kind of experience. Is that, you know, people are going to come to you and say thank you. You wouldn't believe how much, you know, by telling your story, you've actually inspired me to now go out there and do whatever it is that they're doing.
I love
It's
that.
it happens, right? You know, don't
Yeah.
think that it don't.
And again, the other thing that's about YouTube is going to find your people. It may take some time. That's why being consistent is so important, right? You've got to get a, you know, it's like every Friday or every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, whatever it is, be consistent because YouTube wants you to be successful, right? YouTube makes ad revenue off of your
Yeah.
videos. So they want to find your tribe. They want to help you find your tribe.
Yeah, absolutely. Like YouTube doesn't want you to fail. Like a lot of people
No.
are like, they're like, yeah, they're just cut you off your ad revenue. They just, you know, whatever. And I was like, okay, well, whatever. I mean, I'm sure YouTube wants to get as paid as much as possible, like I do, right? So,
Yeah.
you know, I know that there is like, you know, partnership experience, like partnerships you have to do if you want to be, you know, if you want to experience the YouTube thing, right? So you have to follow within their guidelines. They have ad revenue, they have ad partners, all this other stuff, right? But
Yeah.
ultimately, they want to see people do quite well. They want your videos to succeed and they want to find your audience so that your video can succeed. And you got to give YouTube that best chance to do that for you. And that's by doing good titles and hashtags and descriptions and all the other stuff and help YouTube help you, right?
Yeah.
Be
Exactly.
consistent for YouTube and YouTube will start, you know, going out there. It's like, okay, we don't know who you are. We don't know what you are like. So we're going to start hitting a whole bunch of people out there with your videos. And then some of them are going to start getting triggered by it. And we're going to start knowing who they are. And we're going to start sending it out to them type of people. But this takes time, right? We got to figure
Mhm.
this out. This is a whole algorithm that's being built here. And the
Yeah.
more consistent you are, the more it's going to actually benefit you in the YouTube experience. But it takes a while. Like, you know, some people
Yeah.
can just knock it right off the park and just fly and do really well. And I don't know how they quite do that. You
Yeah.
know,
No,
but, you know,
yeah,
right?
like you, be consistent. Be
Be
consistent.
consistent.
Do it for a year. The other thing I loved about your conversation with Sean Cannell is, and you really said it earlier, you stay consistent at who you are. One thing that you and Sean talked about is if you want to grow fast, if you want to grow fast on YouTube, you got to go negative. You got to go crash bros. You got to go the world's on fire. And you looked at that and you said, that's not who I am. And you stayed true to yourself. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and it's hard. So in all fairness, I do hit the fear mongering titles occasionally. You know, I mean, I do put that out there. And it's the only way that you're really going to get a bunch of views on your channel is to like I've done really descriptive titles and nobody's going to click on them, right? I
Yeah.
mean, it's just unfortunate. It's just headlines are it, right? So there is going to be some fear mongering titles out there. However, the information within itself, I do not throw out you know, like I'm going to use the example of an Alex Jones style. Like, you know who Alex Jones is? Right? Okay. So I'm sure everybody's familiar with Alex Jones. He was like, you know, this really loudmouth propagandist. He would take a little bit of information, blow it way the hell out of proportion and try to scare the hell out of everybody. Had a hugely popular channel because of it. Right. Now, I've done it, right? I've, you know, gone out there and tested the waters and put out, you know, the fear mongering video to try and scare everybody, show everybody how, you know, the whole world's going to crash and die and burn around them and stuff like that. And they do quite well, right? The videos will make a lot of money. It's not the way I feel. Like I am
Yeah.
honest with like I look back on those videos and I'm like, yeah, they made you some money. You know, I mean, do you want to be an actor or do you want to be a real economist here? You know, it's
Mm.
just like because you can act it, you can do all the trigger words and all the you know, all the stuff, or you can do the deep diving research and come out with, you know, the appropriate information that is real to you and real to the
Yeah.
people out there who can actually use this information to benefit their lives and not just sitting there, you know, scaring the hell out of them with this information, showing them how like everything is going to crash
Yeah.
around them.
Yeah.
So being true to that, it was just like, okay, if the universe is really going to provide you with an abundance and you're putting out useful, helpful information, it will just naturally come back to you. right? It will just naturally flow. It may take time, but it's just gonna occur in that fashion. So that's what I do. I try to remember that, it's not a matter of being opinionated and judgmental and scare tactics and stuff like that, but to be helpful and informative and useful with the information. And when that starts to happen in a more consistent fashion, I find that the stability of the channel and the consistency of the channel, even though the profit isn't necessarily there at times, the consistency of the channel is much more stable.
Yeah.
And then it's easier for me because then I don't have to think about like, okay, well, you got to scare them, and how do I scare? Instead it's just more like, this is the information, and that's all I have to do is just worry about putting out the information correctly.
Yeah. It's also thinking long term, right? If you want quick money, you want to grow fast, go fear. But I actually know a couple of creators with 500,000 subs and more who went that route during the pandemic. And they've admitted to me privately that they don't enjoy their lives, right? They're interacting with a crowd that's always negative. They can't do anything else. Like how the hell can you monetize anything just being the world's ending, right? What are you going to sell, bunkers or something? Um, yeah, so I think it's a very short-sighted view, and it doesn't help anybody. I think it was Alex Hermosi that said something like, um, I want to make sure I wrote this down this morning. The world belongs to optimists, right? The cynics get to be right, but the optimists get to be rich.
Yeah.
When you think long term, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. And I also have to think like, you know, it's not smart to compare yourself to other people, right? It's just like you just kind of compare yourself to yourself in your past and stuff like that. And and I think about like what it is that a lot of people would expect when you have a popular YouTube channel, and you built it up to 138,000 subscribers and stuff. And I think about how much money I leave on the table by not taking sponsorships or anything like that. I just kind of go for the YouTube ad revenue. And, I do have a couple of membership kind of things that go on that, do provide a little bit of income. It's not substantial, but it's nice. Um, and I don't really stress about the money. I don't even really think about how to earn money. I mean, I try to, because I want to be that entrepreneur. Like, I feel it inside, but I don't have like this deep passion for like earning a lot of money or something like that. When I started earning money, the only goal that I had for earning money was $100, because that's the limitation that Google sets for actually getting paid, right? You have to earn at
Right.
least $100. So that was my goal, was $100 on YouTube. And when I did that, I'm like, wow, that's cool. I want to do that again. Right. So when it started doing really well, and I realized, oh man, there's some revenue coming in. This is awesome. The only thing I could really think of that I really wanted was to be able to pay my bills.
Yeah.
That was it. That was the only thing I could think of. It was just like, man, it's going to be really nice to not have to stress about paying bills. Like I could just pay any bill at will. And I told my wife, I said, you don't have to count what goes into the grocery shopping box and, the cart anymore.
Yeah.
I said, you can just, she's a really thrifty shopper to begin with. So I never stressed about it. But she says, wow, this is the first time I've never really done that. Right. This is our, like, this was our, like, holy moly, we made it moment. Paying our bills on time and not counting our groceries. Like, isn't that weird, Mike? Like, where my expectations of what I want for the future are pretty small. Like, I just go for it and just see what happens out there. And if I happen to earn $100 million doing something someday, I'll probably be like, I don't know what I'm doing with it anyway. Like, I don't even know why I did it. So to me, like, I'm there, like I'm succeeding. I'm doing what it is that I wanted to do, sharing this information, being able to travel, going and do these conferences, all the stuff that I'm doing. This is my dream. This is like, I'm achieving it. And if it happens to get better, cool. If this is it, this is awesome. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like,
That's amazing. Well, Simon, we're just about up on time. One more time,
okay.
where can people find you? And let's one more time shout out the wife's channel. I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So Sarah's channel is Dishes Every Day. So just simple dishes every day. About 500 subscribers now. ASMR channel doing dishes. Pretty unique channel. And then as far as I go right now. I'm pretty much active on YouTube. I do have all the other, social medias. I'm on X and Facebook and all the other stuff. But really, I'm just pretty much active on YouTube. Is where I do all my commenting and everything else. You can send me an email if you like, but right now my email is so overrun. I have a hard time trying to communicate. You know that, Mike. I mean, it was like, yeah, the texting I'm much better at, but I got to leave my texting to just a select few people, or also just get overrun. But so you can send
Yeah.
me an email, and I hope I will get back to you if I do catch that. But yeah, pretty much active on YouTube.
Very, very cool. Well, you already have, you can tell your wife, Sarah, she's already got some more subs. People are telling me in the comments. So,
Nice,
Simon,
thank you.
yeah, of course, man. Thank you, man. Take care of yourself. Have a wonderful weekend. All right.
You too, Mike. Thank you.